Oh, right, Chloe says. She looks at the cappuccino, then at the officer. Officer, she asks, extending the cup toward him. The officer runs his eyes over her, pausing on the inch-long scar on her forehead before continuing down to stop on her severed pinky, which holds the cup. Doberman, she thinks with a shudder, and it takes all her restraint not to fold the pinky out of view. Thanks, he says, his hand purposely grazing the stump as he takes it. Chloe turns to Mo. I'll run home and grab some clothes for Hayes. Thanks, Mo says, sounding completely done in. Look, the officer says after taking a sip of his cappuccino, his attitude softening slightly with the gift. I get you're upset, but if you want my advice, in the future, I suggest you girls learn to keep a better eye on your drinks. He takes another long pull as Chloe smiles and nods along. 7. Mo. The last thing Officer Gretzky said before leaving was, call if she changes her mind about being raped. Like it was a choice Hazel was making, deciding to be raped or not. Mo drops her face in her hands, unable to believe this is happening, has happened. She can't get her head around it, like time has reversed, hurtled back 8 years. Different place, different trauma, same feeling of despair. The doors to the outside open as a nurse leaves for the night, and Mo shivers as a gust of wind blows in. Hazel still has her jacket, and she is cold, a state that causes extreme stress no matter how much she tells herself she's not in danger. She rubs her arms for warmth, hating herself. When she realized Hazel wasn't at the apartment, she knew something wasn't right. There was no way Hazel would go off with a guy she'd just met. Why didn't she listen to her gut? Find My Friends led her to a liquor store in the Tenderloin, a place called Emperor Liquor. The owner had seen Hazel through the window, staggering unsteadily down the sidewalk with no coat, and he'd ushered her inside. A good man. Mo is often surprised by the kindness of strangers, people willing to go the extra mile for another, sometimes even sacrificing a great deal to help. 8 years ago, Kyle, when he was only 19 and someone she'd known less than a day, saved her along with 6 others when he bravely hiked into a blizzard to get help after the accident. He walked away not expecting a thing, not even a thank you. She often wonders about that, if she's as good a person as he is. She knows she is generous, but it's easy to give when you have a lot. True evidence of one's humanity is when giving comes at a cost. The one time she was tested, she failed, and it left doubt of her goodness etched on her soul. When she and Ruby got to the liquor store, Hazel was sitting on a stool beside the register, her head bent and her eyes focused on the scarred linoleum floor. She didn't look up, didn't seem to realize Mo was there. She wore a worn leather jacket, her parka nowhere in sight. Ruby stepped close and sniffed her knee, her tail swishing with recognition of a person she knew, and Hazel swung her head toward the dog in a slow, languid way that made Mo realize something was wrong beyond whatever trauma had occurred. Her pupils were small, constricted so they barely existed, and her normally ivory face was white like it had been drained of blood. I came to take you home, Mo said, her heart scatter firing as she tried to figure out what had happened. She thought maybe it was shock but quickly realized that wasn't it when Hazel said, Mo, what are you doing here? Like she had no recollection of their conversation from 20 minutes before. Mo wrapped her arm around Hazel's shoulders to help her up, but the leather jacket was large, and she slipped from Mo's grip. Hazel caught herself on the stool, and that's when Mo saw it, a patch of maroon on the cracked brown vinyl. Sickness rose in her throat, and her knees went weak. Oh, she said. Hazel looked with her as the store owner looked away, his eyes sliding to the floor. Hazel didn't react. As she turned back, her chin dropped again to her chest, and then she tilted her head and said, his jacket. Pulling from Mo's hold, she shrugged off the leather jacket and held it toward the store owner. Maroon, she said with shocking clarity, then slumped back to the dazed state of the moment before. Mo also thanked the man, then led Hazel outside. It was cold, and Hazel shivered, so Mo peeled off her North Face jacket and draped it over her shoulders. When they got in the Uber, Mo asked the driver to take them to the emergency room. Hazel said nothing, but a few minutes later, when they pulled in front of the entrance, she said, "No," and shook her head hard, her eyes fixed on the red emergency letters. "Hayes, we have to." Hazel shook her head harder. Mo felt tears threatening and swallowed them back. "Hayes, you could be hurt." It took all her willpower not to look at the dark patch on Hazel's jeans. And something's not right. Though Hazel continued to shake her head, when Mo got out and opened Hazel's door, obediently she climbed out and followed. It was odd. Normally, Hazel was very strong-willed, bullheaded to the point of frustration, but it was as if her free will had been turned way down or her brain wasn't quite firing on all cylinders. The admitting nurse, a statue of a woman with a shock of white hair and piercing blue eyes, took one look at Hazel and asked, "Do you know what she's on?" "On," Mo parroted, looking from the nurse to Hazel and back again, and only then did it occur to her that Hazel was on some sort of drug. "Hayes," Mo said. "Did you take something? Did Alan give you something?" It was the first time Mo had thought of Alan as having something to do with what had happened. Hazel's head lolled up toward Mo. "He gave me your beer." "Let's get her inside," the nurse said with some urgency, causing Mo to grow concerned. Another nurse showed up almost immediately and took Hazel's blood pressure, pulse, and temperature. And a few minutes after that, the doctor appeared. "Hazel, do you know why you're here?" she asked. The woman was old and tough. Her steel gray hair was bundled tight on her head, and there was a tight pinch to her mouth that said, "Don't mess with me." Hazel's head lolled in a circle before stopping at 5 o'clock, her eyes on the floor. "Do you know how you got here?" Head sway. "Do you have any idea what drug you've taken?" No response at all. "What's the last thing you remember?" Hazel looked at Mo. "Can we go? I want to go home." "Soon," the doctor said. "First, let's make sure you're okay." Hazel's head dropped again so she was looking at the floor. "Hazel, I'm going to have a nurse draw some blood. Your blood pressure's low, and so is your temperature. Will she be okay?" Mo asked, worried by the doctor's intensity. The doctor ignored her. "Hazel, do you remember anything that happened tonight?" "I want to go home," Hazel repeated. "I know," the doctor said with remarkable tenderness. "Hang in there, kiddo. This will all be over soon." She patted Hazel on the knee and turned toward the door. "Doctor," Mo said, hurrying after her. Keeping her voice low, she asked, "What about a rape kit?" "That's why we're here. I think she was raped." The doctor sighed heavily and glanced at Hazel, then back at Mo. "She has no idea why she's here. At some point, she might figure it out, but at the moment, she's still heavily under the influence of whatever she's on, and until she tells me otherwise, it's not my place to speculate on what has or hasn't happened." "But," the doctor held up her hand, gnarled and spotted, a simple gold band on the third finger. "If she was unknowingly given something, then assaulted, which seems possible given her current state, it will be up to her to figure that out." "Unknowingly given something. Roofied," the doctor said, a word that sent a jolt to Mo's spine as she realized what she was saying, that Alan had drugged Hazel's drink, then raped her. "We need to do a rape kit," Mo pleaded, her pulse pounding. Alan had done this, and Mo was the one who'd left Hazel alone with him. When Hazel figures out what has happened, she will need to come to terms with that and deal with it, the doctor said calmly. "My job is to make sure she's well enough to do that. But, look, if you want to call the police and report what you know, have at it, but as far as Hazel goes," she threw a look over her shoulder at Hazel, who was sitting slumped and slack-jawed on the edge of the exam table. "At the moment, she's not going to be a part of it. These things are personal, and how they are processed is up to the individual. My job is to figure out what she's on and make sure she recovers from it. That's all." She marched past, and Mo returned to the exam table. She reached for Hazel's hand, but Hazel pulled it away, clearly angry even through her daze. "Go away," she said and folded her arms across her chest. So Mo returned to the waiting area with Ruby, sat in the chair closest to the exam rooms, and waited. Half an hour later, the nurse came out and let her know Hazel had GHB in her system, a common date rape drug. They were giving her activated charcoal to absorb it, along with IV fluids to keep her hydrated and to help stabilize her blood pressure. When the nurse left, Mo called the police. And a lot of good that did. Officer Gretzky was condescending, rude, and completely unhelpful. She hugs herself tighter and rocks in the chair, shivering with the cold and her rage. Rape. The word causes spider chills across her skin. All girls grow up with a certain amount of dread at the thought, but for Mo it has always felt abstract. One of those sordid things that happens in dark alleys and seedy neighborhoods, not something that happens to someone she loves after a night of beers at their local bar to celebrate something wonderful. How could she have not seen it? Recognized the danger. She takes out her phone and pulls up Alan's Instagram. He looks so normal. His profile picture is a shot of him grinning the same toothy grin he gave when he greeted them. She scrolls through his feed. He doesn't post much, but a girl named Ashley and another named Meg have tagged him dozens of times. Most of the posts are of them at concerts, parties, and clubs. She switches to Facebook. His cover photo shows him and a group of friends standing on a rock in the mountains with backpacks. He drives a BMW and likes basketball, the Lakers, and football, the Rams. His brother, James, is in some of the photos. They look alike, except James looks nicer. There's a graduation photo that shows his parents, a handsome couple, the mom blonde and the dad bald. His profile says he works as an account executive for a local tech company called Bitworks. The door to the exam rooms opens, and a nurse Mo doesn't recognize pokes her head out. "You can come back now." Mo shoves her phone in the pouch of her sweatshirt and follows her to Hazel's exam bay. Hazel is now in a hospital gown and is sitting back in the bed with the head cranked up, looking like a proper patient. An ID bracelet is on her wrist, and a pulse monitor is clipped to her finger. She turns her head slowly to look at Mo, her pupils still small but with more recognition than was there before. "Hey," Mo says, stepping toward her but then stopping when Hazel recoils. "Chloe's bringing you some clothes from home. As soon as she gets here, we can go." Hazel looks at her hands on top of the blanket and doesn't answer. Unsure what else to say, Mo stands quiet. She wants to apologize, beg for forgiveness, but knows now is not the time. She wants to ask what she can do but knows the answer is nothing. After what seems like an eternity but which is probably no more than a few minutes, Hazel repeats what she said earlier, "He gave me your beer." "Yeah, okay," Mo says, only realizing the significance a few seconds later. "He gave me your beer." Alan grabbed both their beers, and when Mo walked past to take the call from Kyle, he was still holding them, the handles fisted in one hand. Hers was slightly more full than Hazel's and had her lipstick on the rim. The beer Alan drugged was meant for her. She was the one he intended to rape. 8. Chloe. The knock comes less than 10 minutes after they arrive home. It's nearly 6 in the morning, and Chloe's so tired she can't see straight. In the last 2 days, she's slept less than 4 hours, and all she wants is to curl up in her bed and not wake up until dinner time. But that's not possible. She and Ruby can't stay here. They need to go to the van. She only came back to get the wagon and her vet bag. Ruby tilts her head, turns toward the sound, then goes into full-fledged guard dog mode, barking and howling and yapping up a storm, waking up everyone on their floor, in the building, possibly in the entire neighborhood. Chloe drops the water jug she was filling and shushes her, but it's no use. Dogs who care about their people bark. She hurries to the living room and, holding Ruby by the collar, opens the door, prepared to be facing Jerry the landlord and already rehearsing the plea she will make to keep Mo from being evicted. Instead, she finds herself looking at the officer from the hospital. "What the hell did you put in my coffee?" he growls, his voice even gravelier than before. Ruby lunges and snaps, but Chloe holds her tight. "Your coffee," she says innocently, as if she has no idea what he's talking about. He looks terrible, and she's amazed how quickly his appearance has come apart, his short, spiky hair matted with sweat, his eyes bloodshot, and his mouth pinched in a tight slash of anger. "What's going on?" Mo asks, walking from Hazel's room. "Oh," she says. "Officer Gretzky. Do you have news about Alan?" she asks hopefully. "Who the hell is Alan?" Mo opens her mouth to answer but decides against it, her eyes sliding from the officer to Chloe and then back again. "Would you like to come in?" she asks with the same fake innocence Chloe used a moment before. "Crap," he exclaims and nearly pushes Chloe aside as he bursts into the apartment. "Bathroom." Chloe points down the hall, and he hobble races past her. Both she and Mo watch, and when the door closes, Mo turns, her lips pursed, going for a stern look of reproach but failing miserably when the officer swears, and she nearly chokes on her giggle. "What did you do?" she hisses. "Just gave him a little X-lax to help him relax, though it doesn't seem to be working. He seems pretty wound up." Mo shakes her head, and Chloe smirks. "It's not exactly GHB, but it gets the point across." Chloe's always felt there's too little justice in the world when it comes to jerks like Gretzky, and that a little intentional karmic intervention once in a while helps balance things out. More cussing through the wood makes it impossible not to laugh, and when it passes, Chloe asks, "How's Hayes?" Mo looks at the floor. "Not good. Still acting weird. It's the GHB. It's going to take some time to wear off. I should have gone after her." "How?" "She didn't answer your texts. She didn't have Find My Friends on." "I don't know," Mo mumbles. "I feel like I could have done something." Chloe's about to say something more when the door to the bathroom opens and Gretzky stomps toward them. "I should arrest you," he says, wagging his stubby finger at her. Ruby's hackles lift, and she growls with her teeth bared. Chloe holds her tight and is about to answer, but Mo gets there first. "Arrest her," she says. "For what? Did you see her put something in your coffee?" He glares, but trying to intimidate Mo is a complete waste of time. "If you want my advice," she offers her most engaging smile, the one that shows all her pearly whites, "in the future, I suggest you learn to keep a better eye on your drinks." Gretzky glares, his eyes narrowed in on Mo before he turns them on Chloe. "This isn't over," he snarls. Chloe shrugs like it's no big deal. And though she knows she shouldn't, as the idea is truly terrible and certain only to make things worse, as he walks past, she winks. He whirls, his face red as boiled ham, but he's already past the threshold, so calmly she closes the door. "Bitch," he snarls through the wood. Chloe looks down at Ruby. "It's okay, girl. I'm sure he meant it as a compliment." "You probably shouldn't have done that," Mo says. "I did it for Hayes. He's not the one who raped her. He's the one who didn't give a damn she got raped." 9. Mo. "Dog. What dog?" Mo asks innocently. Jerry narrows his eyes, possibly his nicest feature, golden brown and wide set over a hawkish nose and thin lips. She opens the door wider to illustrate it's only her in her pajamas in the apartment. "Our television was on. Could that have been what you heard?" Mo has always been an excellent liar, which isn't a trait she's necessarily proud of but is one that comes in handy at times like this. After Officer Gretzky left, Chloe and Ruby did the same. Nothing Mo said would convince Chloe otherwise, which turned out to be a good thing. No evidence, no crime. She smiles sweetly at Jerry. "There was barking," Jerry says, his brow crunched deep over his eyes. "Last night, and again early this morning. Felicia heard it as well." Felicia is a middle-aged woman who never leaves her apartment. She has some sort of job that allows her to work from home and seemingly no social life. Mostly she's sweet, delivering homemade gingerbread loaves at Christmas and always happy to pick up the mail if Mo needs it. But she's also the first one to tattle on her neighbors over any infraction of the building's rules. She must have been mistaken, Mo says, barely containing a yawn. Jerry's knock woke her almost exactly 3 hours after she went to sleep, and unlike Chloe, Mo's a girl who needs a solid 8 hours of shut-eye to function. What about your roommate? The one with the short hair? Not here. She watches his eyes flick side to side as he tries to come up with something else to say. Finally, with no great epiphany, he mumbles, no pets. We're clear on that, Crystal. Fine. With one last glance into the apartment, he pivots and walks away. Mo closes the door and slides down the wood to the floor, then drops her head to her knees as the reality of what happened last night plows into her. Hazel was raped. She stares at the crisscross pattern of the parquet floor, studying the grain of each wedge of wood and thinking of everything that went into creating it, each storm and gust of wind and influence on how the tree grew, slow and steady, until the day it was felled and all that stopped. It was supposed to be me. The knot in her stomach tightens. Familiar. The same guilt she felt the day she lived and her best friend, Finn, died, when her first shameful reaction was relief. We do not control our reactions, her mom said when she confessed the awful truth. They were at the hospital, where Mo was recovering from frostbite, her fingers and toes in danger of infection. Only our actions. Tears threaten as Mo thinks of all the actions that led to what happened last night, her selfish desire to go out even though Hazel really wanted to stay home, her choice to take Kyle's call and leave Hazel alone with Alan, the inaction of not looking for her when she realized Hazel hadn't come home. The wake-up chime of her phone goes off in her room, and with a shuddering sigh, she pushes to her feet. On her way to the bathroom to get ready, she stops at Hazel's room. The sign on the door reads, "Think like a PROTON, always positive." She knocks lightly. Nothing. Haze. She rests her forehead on the wood. I need to go to work. I have my interview today. Mentioning the interview with Jake Tapper seems wrong. Going to work seems wrong. Leaving Hazel alone definitely feels wrong. But what choice is there? Hazel doesn't want her around. She's made that clear. At the hospital, she continued to tell her to go away. When they got in the van, she climbed to the far back so she was as far from Mo as possible. When they got home, she refused to let Mo help her. I'll be back this afternoon. Do you need anything? She sets her hand on the door, torn between staying and leaving. Finally, she says, Chloe's in the van if you need her. She said she'll be back later this morning after she takes Ruby to the shelter. Mo continues on, thinking how quickly everything has come apart. Snap. Like a pretzel or a twig, she thinks as she steps under the hot stream of water in the shower. In the mountains, 8 years ago, it was a pop. Actually 3 of them. Pop, 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 as the rivets that held the guardrail gave way and the camper she and 10 other people were in plunged over the side of a mountain. Last night, it was the buzz of her phone. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Don't touch me, Hazel said when Mo reached out to help her from the exam table, the words thick but the sentiment razor sharp, hate and blame radiating. The doctor explained Hazel's anger could be a result of the GHB. It messes with a person's emotions and can stay in the system for days, sometimes weeks. She said not to worry if Hazel wasn't acting like herself. She will probably be anxious and moody and might suffer post-traumatic stress episodes. The hangover will be brutal. She will be nauseous and confused and have a screaming headache that Advil and Tylenol won't help. She should not be left alone for long periods, and she should not drive. When she is feeling better, she should talk to someone, a professional who deals with these sorts of things. Mo steps from the shower and dries herself off. Hazel's not going to talk to someone. She is an intensely private person and would never go to a psychiatrist. It's possible she might never admit what happened to anyone at all. She pulls on her clothes and only realizes she didn't rinse the conditioner from her hair when she goes to brush it. After undressing, she gets in the shower again and focuses more carefully on the tasks in front of her: clothes, makeup, hair, Uber to the office. She walks into the Market Street high-rise that's been home to Fact News since she started the company 2 years ago. Usually, walking into the building lifts her spirit like a jolt of caffeine. Her dad worked in a building similar to this, and each time she enters its gleaming lobby, she feels like she is carrying on in his footsteps. "Hey, Mo," Esther says when Mo steps off the elevator. Tall, lean, and mostly sweet but with a heavy dose of sass, Esther played first-string basketball for NYU until she blew out her shoulder and decided to hang up her high tops. "You're late." "Yeah. Sorry," Mo says, going for perky but not sure she's pulling it off. The phone's been ringing off the hook. This story is on Fee. She smiles a great big grin with lots of teeth, which was the reason Mo hired her. Anyone with that great a smile is someone you definitely want on your team. "Thanks, E. That's great. You okay?" "Yeah. Fine. Thought you'd be happier." "I am," Mo lies. "I've just got a lot on my mind." "Yeah. No kidding." Jake Tapper. If that man grew a foot and hit the weight room, I might have a crush." Mo manages a laugh. Esther is over 6 feet and ripped, and she likes her men the same. Mo continues toward the newsroom but detours before she gets there into the only private space on the floor, the conference room. Leaning against the door, she closes her eyes as her pulse throbs and her eyes well with fresh tears. "Pull it together, before everything falls apart," she orders, but telling herself that only makes it worse. She understands this is the biggest story in the company's history, the break they've been working toward, and that in half an hour she has the most important interview of her life. She knows she needs to focus, put on her game face, and nail it. But all she can think about is Hazel. A knock on the door startles her. "Mo," Esther says through the wood. "Yeah. Here," she says stupidly, sounding like a 10-year-old answering roll call in gym class. "CNN's on the line," Esther says. "They need to run a sound check." "Yeah. Okay. Just give me a second." Closing her eyes again, she takes 3 deep breaths. As she exhales the final one, her phone buzzes with a text. Pulling it from her pocket, she sees a message from Kyle: "Have a great interview. I know you're going to kill it, Zoxo." Strange, she thinks as she stares at the words, that he doesn't know what's happened. This thing that is so catastrophic and big and that has thrown her life completely off kilter, Kyle is entirely unaware of his life exactly as it was yesterday when they talked. At some point she will need to tell him, but at the moment, it's all she can do not to fall apart. She texts back a thumbs up and 2 red hearts. "Mo," Esther says. "They're waiting." "Yeah. Okay." Straightening her sweater and her expression, she reaches for the door, but before her hand touches the lever, she stops. Pulling out her phone again, she dials from memory. "Agent Fitzpatrick," Fitz answers. "Hey, Fitz," Mo says, the words cracking. "Mo. Everything okay?" "No." 10. Chloe. Chloe was supposed to take Ruby to the shelter. She promised Mo that was what she was going to do, and she told herself it was what she needed to do. She cannot keep this dog. She has no way of taking care of her. The problem is, when she woke up after falling asleep in the back of the van, the dog was curled against her, shivering. Typically, dogs do better than humans when it comes to cold, but the pup is so depleted she has no reserves. Chloe tried to get her to eat, but she just stared forlornly at the bowl, then went back to snuggling against Chloe for warmth. Dogs are devoted creatures, The best of them so committed to their families that abandonment can devastate them to the point that they shut down, emotionally and physically. Sometimes, that suffering manifests itself as anorexia, a debilitating condition in which, no matter how hungry, a dog is unable to eat. If Chloe takes her to the shelter, they will undoubtedly put her down. Shelters simply don't have the resources to deal with traumatized animals in distress. Ruby's only hope is for Chloe to get her eating. Chloe leans her head back against the panels of the van. The vet she worked for before Eric, her loser boyfriend of 8 years, decided to take off to find himself, warned her, "We're not superheroes, kid. All we can do is our best. But at some point you need to realize there's simply no way to save them all." He was the kindest person she knew, but he never took home a stray. And this was why. Chloe can't take care of this dog. She can't even take care of herself. Her stomach growls ravenously as if to prove it. She hasn't eaten since the half plate of Brussels sprouts she had last night. Her phone buzzes, and she looks at the cracked screen to see a message from Hazel. "Are you nearby?" The van is parked in the lot of a supermarket half a block from the apartment. "Yeah. On my way." Chloe looks down at Ruby, and she looks back with intelligent, curious eyes that say, "Where to, boss?" And Chloe knows she's done for. She could no more bring this dog to the shelter than cut off her own foot. "Sorry, girl, but I'm going to need to knock you out again," she says, and pulls a syringe from her vet bag along with another bag of IV fluids she can't afford. As soon as the dog is hooked up and asleep, she places her in the wagon and covers her with a towel. As she walks toward the apartment, she prays Jerry's not around. But as soon as she walks through the doors, she knows the jig is up. Felicia, Mo's nosy neighbor, walks around the corner from where the mailboxes are. She looks at Chloe, then down at the wagon. "I knew I heard a dog." 11. Mo. Mo drops her elbows to the conference table and her face to her hands. She bombed the interview. She started out off balance and never quite found her footing. She could tell Jake Tapper was disappointed, and she doubts he'll invite her back. In the last minute, she redeemed herself slightly with an anecdote about people and dogs. "I actually don't agree with a lot of this," she said with a flick of her hand to the chart with the boom graphic on the screen. "The doom and gloom of it. I know what the data shows and that it's real, but I also believe things are going to change and that the trend is going to turn around." "Why's that?" Jake Tapper asked. "Because you, Jake, like most of us, are a lot like a dog." She smiled wide, and Jake tilted his head, which made him indeed look a bit canine. "All any of us really want is to belong to something more than ourselves and to feel safe and loved. So while, at the moment, things might look a bit bleak in the happily ever after department, I think it's only temporary and that, ultimately, the pendulum is going to swing back and we will figure out new ways to navigate the world as it continues to evolve and discover all sorts of ways to love and be a family." She smiled wide again, then barked, and Jake barked back his approval, which made her feel a little better about things. She pulls off her false eyelashes, packs up her laptop, and, with a deep sigh, walks from the conference room. "Good job," Esther says brightly. "Woof. Woof." Mo musters back, hoping that single sound bite might be enough to get the story some traction. #woof, #weredogs. She'll work on a few more hashtags during the day and send them to their social media person. "I have a meeting. I'll be back this afternoon." "You're leaving," Esther says. She holds up a stack of message notes. "You just got here." "Yeah. I know. And I'll be back. Hold down the fort." Mo flees before Esther can ask any more questions. In the 2 years since Mo started the company, she's rarely not first in the office or last to leave. All those long days put in to get to this moment, the day Fact News became a legit player in the news game, a moment that, until last night, seemed incredibly important. Her phone buzzes as she steps from the building, the frigid wind whipping and making her wish she had her North Face jacket, which Hazel still has. The bark was good. She runs her thumb over Kyle's words, wondering if he noticed how off she was. Probably not. Kyle's not perceptive that way, straightforward and earnest. He takes things at face value, a quality she loves. More texts pop up from friends, associates, her mom. She emojis back smiley faces, hearts, and thumbs ups, then turns off the phone and shoves it in her pocket as she continues on to Ritual Roasters, her favorite coffee shop in the city. Fitz is already seated at a table beside the window, and just seeing him brings enormous comfort. She can't say exactly why, except Fitz is that sort of person, the kind you can count on no matter what, and who, once he's your friend, will always be on your side. "Hey," he says, standing and offering his trademark crooked smile, always slightly higher on the right. "Earl Grey, 1 sugar. Please," she says as she shudders away the cold. He hurries away, and she looks through the window at the city, people bustling around with their shoulders hitched against the wind, happily going about their lives. Yesterday, she was one of them. She had lunch with their media designer at Taddick Grill. He was excited about tickets he'd scored to see Beyoncé. She was excited about the report. It all seemed so wonderful. Fitz sets her tea in front of her, along with a cinnamon twist. Her stomach rumbles, and she realizes she hasn't eaten anything since the ice cream she had yesterday afternoon. "You looked hungry," Fitz says with a shrug, his thin shoulders not quite filling out his dark charcoal suit. He sits down with his own coffee, black, dark roast, a simple guy with simple tastes. "How's chasing bad guys going?" she asks. "I've hung up my holster." Really? She's genuinely surprised. For as long as she's known Fitz, his dream has been to be a field agent with the FBI, an opportunity he got less than 2 years ago. "Turns out I'm better behind a desk." Probably true, Mo says. Fitz is definitely more Poindexter than G.I. Joe. "It seems I have a soft spot for criminals when I actually meet them." "Oh number. That's not good." "Nope. Definitely a problem." Mo smiles, imagining Fitz confronting a drug smuggler and ending up in a conversation with him to figure out where his problems began. "So you're back to using your diabolical mind to take them down anonymously." "Exactly." He grins. "I really would make a good mob boss." He attempts to screw his mouth into a surly scowl, which looks ridiculous on his white bread, boyish face. "Absolutely," Mo says. "No one would ever suspect you." He sets his coffee in front of him, and his face turns serious. "That bad?" she asks. "Definitely not good. Alan has a record. Worse," Fitz says. "He doesn't." He lifts his phone and reads, "Alan Clayton Redding. 26. 1 sibling. A younger brother, James Tyler Redding. Alan was born in Thousand Oaks, California. He works as an account executive for a company called Bitworks and is squeaky clean except for a few speeding tickets." He sets down the phone. "But," Mo says. "But," Fitz says, "it's what's between the lines that's disturbing. The first thing I noticed was from his senior year in high school." "High school?" Mo asks as her mind calculates. Alan is 2 years older than she is, so Fitz is talking 8 years ago. "He transferred to a different school," Fitz says. "Okay. So, 3 months before graduation." Mo doesn't see the significance. "It seemed odd," Fitz goes on. "His whole life he attended the same public school system, and in high school, he ran track and was good. But then suddenly, right before his final season, he transfers to a new school where he's ineligible to run." Mo's nose for news twitches, and she nods in appreciation of how good Fitz is at his job. "So I called the school," Fitz says, "and the principal gives me the standard line about not being able to share information about a student. But then, without prodding, she goes on to say she remembered Alan transferring right after prom. She emphasized the words like she was trying to tell me something. So I did some digging, searched through social media posts from that time, and found out the girl Alan took to prom ended up in the hospital that night. Mo's eyes get wide, and Fitz nods as he confirms it. GHB poisoning. The girl nearly OD'd and needed to have her stomach pumped. He started doing this 8 years ago. Mo says, her blood going cold at the thought. That's what it looks like. But he doesn't have a record. How? How is that possible? I called the girl's mom, and she said they did go to the police, but Alan denied having anything to do with it. Which made it his word against the daughter's, and since the daughter couldn't remember most of what happened, the police decided they didn't have enough to make a case. So that was it. He just got away with it. Not entirely. It seems the students had no problem deciding who to believe, which was the reason he transferred. But no charges, and no record. It gets worse, Fitz says. When he was at Berkeley, there were 2 separate sexual assault investigations at his fraternity. Both involved victims who had been roofied with GHB. At Sigma Nu. Fitz looks at his phone. Yeah. Sigma Nu. There was no mention of Alan, but he was kicked out of the house shortly after the second investigation started, which makes me think he might have been involved. And what happened? Nothing. The inquiries were dropped due to lack of credible, he makes quote marks in the air, evidence. So what you're saying is Alan's been doing this for over 8 years, to who knows how many women, and despite several of the victims coming forward, not a single accusation has stuck. Fitz blows out a hard breath. It's tough to nail these guys. The drug makes the victims pretty much useless as witnesses because their testimony is deemed unreliable, so the cases rarely go forward. Sorry, Mo, I know this isn't what you wanted to hear. She shakes her head, unable to believe this is what she's left with. So it's going to just keep happening. Unless someone stops him, I'm afraid so. 12.